except with respect to item 3.3.1, where the City of Emeryville provided direction to the city manager and city attorney to move forward with extending an offer to the property owner for purchase of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. The special meeting is adjourned. We'll now go right into the Emeryville City Council special meeting for Tuesday, December 16th. It's a study session. We'll have a roll call, please.
Give me a second. Councilmember Asher?
Here.
Councilmember Donahue?
Here.
Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis?
Here.
And Mayor Atkin is excused. She called to say that she was ill.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on items not on the agenda? All right, we'll go right into the study session. Michelle de Guzman, thank you.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Davis, members of the Emeryville City Council. I'm Michelle de Guzman. I'm with the Economic Development and Housing Division of the Community Development Department. I'm here to present tonight on the draft economic development strategy and work plan for fiscal years 14-15 and 15-16. The purpose of the economic development strategy is to plan and prioritize the economic development efforts of the city with the goal of supporting and expanding the economic base of Emeryville. And the purposes for supporting the economic base is to provide revenues to support city services and programs, as well as to ensure that economic development activity that occurs within the city aligns with the community's goals. The community goals with respect to economic development were first defined in the current general plan. There's several bullets there. I will not read all of them, but you can see before you they relate to the mixes of retail that should be pursued, both the mix of retail and location, using economic development as a tool to grow our tax base, supporting small businesses, supporting innovative leading edge industries to provide quality jobs with potential for career advancement, and support and retention of our existing businesses, as well as strategic partnerships. The background of why the economic development strategy was embarked upon to begin with was that the loss of redevelopment ushered in a re-examination of the city's role in economic development and what we could and could not do, and really how we could best support economic development without the tools that had been used over the last several years. In order to look at that more comprehensively, there was a series of community input efforts that were made. In February 2010, there was a survey that was sent to all licensed businesses within the city of Emeryville. A year later, a focus group was conducted of specific businesses, both large and small. And there were also several one-on-one meetings that were conducted by staff with executives from major Emeryville companies. There was also a community meeting that was held, that was open, that was invited to all residents and all businesses in the city. The results of that community input resulted in the strategic goals of the economic development strategy, which I will read. There were 10 that came about, the improvement of access, and that access was primarily related to physical access, traffic, transportation, the facilitation of new infill developments, creating conditions supportive of the business community, workforce development, supporting of innovative and emerging business clusters, marketing Emeryville to business and recreational travelers, supporting small local serving business developments, strategic partnerships, sustainable development, and a fiscal development strategy. Recent activity since the adoption of that strategy has been that the Emeryville economy has largely been in recovery since 2012, because that was also occurring in a period where there was an extended economic recession. Sales tax revenues have started to recover. The high was in fiscal year 2001 of 7.8 million. In the last fiscal year, not 13-14, but 12-13, it was 7.5 million. So we haven't achieved the same levels as the high, but they were, the recovery has started in terms of sales tax. Office vacancy rates, also as opposed to 2010 to 2014, are half of what they were. And R&D, which actually has always been a bright spot in this city, is effectively 0% as of the third quarter of 2014, compared to about an 18% vacancy rate for the East Bay as a whole. In March 2014, the Economic Development Advisory Committee initiated an update of the implementation plan, as the prior implementation plan was for 12-13 and 13-14. In order to do that, they reviewed the progress for the completion of items identified in the prior implementation plan. Another survey was conducted of all licensed Emeryville businesses. They reviewed updated demographic and business information, as well as developed a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. City staff reviewed the materials and input that were developed by the Economic Development Advisory Committee, EDAC, and looked at it as a shift away from the paradigm of the more capital-intensive and direct financial assistance of redevelopment, because those resources were essentially no longer available to the city. And really wanted to look at this new plan, the new work plan for the next 2 fiscal years, as a balanced approach for the attraction and retention of both small and large businesses to help support the breadth of the Emeryville economy, as well as looking at additional ways to support workforce development with a goal to creating pathways for financial security. And that's the creation of better jobs, of better paying jobs, and I'll go more into that briefly over as we go over the work plan. In response to this, the strategic goals in the original strategy have been grouped within 3 new overall objectives, which address the basic tenets of economic development. The first is support economic and job growth, which is essentially business attraction and expansion. Support of the local tax base, which is business retention. And improvement and investment in the Emeryville community itself, which is workforce development. The work plan addresses these 2 fiscal years, 14-15 and 15-16. 14-15 is about halfway over. But the reason that it's retained in this is while some items do not actually need any additional funding, staff is seeking authorization from the council regarding the use of the staff resources in terms of prioritizing the use of time. Funding for any policies and programs contained in the final plan that is required will be incorporated into the adjustment of the city's operating budget, and any future work plan updates will be completed to coincide with the city's operating budget review and approval cycles, which was actually the original goal of this one, but due to some staffing changes at the city, that was not able to be incorporated into the 14-15, 15-16 operating budget. So the first main category under the objectives, I'm going to sort of go through these. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but I would like to touch on what some of these items entail, since they're not, for the sake of brevity, they're not described greatly in these single one lines. The first is support economic and job growth. The way these tables are set up, there are action items. They're broken into 3 categories. One is ongoing efforts that staff is currently undertaking. Ones that are proposed for the next 2 fiscal years as a prioritization, and then others that to be undertaken in the future. And then along the side where you see the X's, those are the original strategic goals that came from the original plan as developed through the community input process. And those demonstrate which of those strategic goals from the original development strategy are being supported by those particular activities. And I have, this looks a little shorter, I sort of condensed some of the sentences and some of the activities to make it better fit on a single slide. So the first under ongoing activities is the support of Emery Go Round and EBOTS, and that's to support the physical access issues. And the next three really go together largely, which is the economic development information on the city's website, our marketing approach and materials, and the city identity program. One thing that became clear during some of our discussions was that Emeryville actually has quite a lot to offer, but the city needs to do a better job about rolling out that information so people know what kind of information we have available, what kind of services we have available. Similarly with the staff point of contact for current and potential businesses. Also ongoing is the pursuit of businesses that will strengthen the Emeryville economy. As noted before, some of those are the small retail businesses based in neighborhood centers, as well as the businesses that are in innovative business clusters such as biotech, new media. And more specific to that, support the Berkeley-Emeryville Bio Corridor, which is an ongoing collaboration that the City of Emeryville and City of Berkeley have had in terms of marketing West Berkeley and Emeryville together as a cluster for the biotech industry. Proposed for 1415, 1516 is the redevelopment of the city-owned Christie Avenue properties. Development of a Welcome to Emeryville package. Again, this is just trying to create more information for businesses that are interested in coming to Emeryville, what is available for them and how they can avail themselves while they're, once they're open. A unified information referral resource for development projects in Emeryville. Several different options have been talked about under this. One that staff is considering most actively is to have a better based, sort of web-based application so that somebody can come in and say, I want to open a business in Emeryville, you know, input some things, and they'll get information as to who they should go to and walk them through the process more specifically, in addition to direct contact with staff. Hosting events to update tenants and brokers on new developments and opportunities in the city. Again, this is part of marketing the city and making businesses aware, because it's a very dynamic marketing environment. And there's the competition within among the Bay Area is very strong, and we want to make sure that Emeryville is continue to be perceived as an exciting and an innovative place to run your business. And some of these are somewhat easier. Announcing new businesses at city council meetings to, you know, when someone gets a business license, to welcome them to our city. And lastly, expansion of the on-street parking program. This is under access. What this could be many things. This is largely related to potentially the placement of looking more comprehensively at our parking program for including both parking meters potentially, as well as looking at a wider way of how we deal with street parking in relation to transit, so that we can have an overall TDM strategy for allowing greater access to the city in general. And future is the evaluation and the facilitation of funding of the installation of last mile fiber optics. That refers to the fact that much of Emeryville is largely served by a fiber optic network, but the issue is connecting buildings which run through our streets, and it's bearing the cost of connecting buildings to that existing fiber optic network to assist businesses in internet connectivity for their workflow. And then the last, which is largely related to timing from the state, the disposal of the properties, the former agency properties that are in the long-range property management plan. The next major category is the strengthening of the tax base. And the two major goals from the original strategy from that are support of small businesses and tourism for shorthand, but essentially regional marketing. And again, that's marketing programs for regional events, such as Super Bowl 50. In the previous iteration, it was America's Cup, because a lot of these major regional events tend to come to the Bay Area, and Emeryville certainly has a role for that. Ongoing is the buy local city purchasing policy. This was originally explored by the city, but it needs to be further integrated with our green purchasing policy. But there'll be a higher prioritization on finishing this up in order to ensure that certainly if the city is making purchase contracts, we're making every effort to allow those funds to flow back into our own economy. For the upcoming fiscal year, similar to the welcoming of businesses, this is just using the resources that we already have, and again, trying to leverage them better. For businesses that have completed their business license, we can host a directory of all licensed businesses on the city of Emeryville. So if someone's coming to look to Emeryville, they can see what businesses are here. And the next are a series of 4 particular action items related to which this could certainly be expanded. The establishment of a small business incentive program. Under redevelopment, there was a fair amount of financial resources for incentives for small businesses. Those incentives are not, those financial resources aren't available, but what the purpose of those was to try to reduce the costs of entry for small businesses, as well as to assist them as much as possible with technical assistance in the startup process, particularly for items that are not necessarily germane to their actually what they're trying to do for their business. And so in that vein, I'll sort of skip to the end. What I'm talking about there is potentially a program to provide architectural and technical assistance to small businesses. Getting permits and developing a project is not many small businesses' first line of expertise, but that needs to happen in order to obtain necessary permits. The first 2 are business tax holiday for new small businesses, as well as permit fee waivers or reductions for small businesses related to facade improvements. The last 2 I mentioned are ways to support small businesses, not by an outlay of cash, but rather by foregoing some of our revenues to reduce their upfront costs. And that's one way that we can help to support the small business community in the startup phase. The last is the informational seminars for Emeryville businesses. And that's really looking at setting up a series of seminars on a semi or regular basis to support small businesses on topics that might be of interest to them. Assistance in dealing with accessibility regulations. Or seminars hosted by nonprofits that can provide startup funding. As we're not able to provide that sort of loan funding, but trying to really make those connections for small businesses who don't have the time to necessarily do that research. And it's likely if we make those seminars, we'll also make the information available on our website as well. But it's really trying to when you're a small business, your issue is time, and trying to make the best use of their time. And in the future, explore the establishment of business improvement districts or merchants associations so that businesses can pool their resources collectively and achieve some of the ends that they may feel are better at a micro neighborhood level. And also potentially establish a business awards program where the city recognizes certain businesses that have contributed to the community. And the last major category is community investments related primarily to workforce development. And the ongoing efforts that are currently happening are connections between the workforce development nonprofit organizations, businesses, and residents, and that's helping to connect particularly nonprofits that provide job training to businesses to help folks that are going through those programs obtain jobs in Emeryville businesses, as well as connecting residents that may benefit from the training programs. And the next is collaborating with the Chamber, neighboring cities, and any regional organizations on economic development activities and initiatives as they arise. And the continued pursuit of public and private financing resources with respect to the public financing, just our ongoing efforts to obtain grant funding, as well as funding that we may be able to obtain from nonprofit or foundation sources. For the next 2 fiscal years, we'll be looking at supporting and expanding the EUSD internship program, working in partnership with EUSD, and looking really both at summer jobs as well as academic year internships, both for the job training and also for the more basic sort of job readiness, showing up at your job, knowing how to dress, knowing how to comport yourself, and also integrating a financial training aspect to it, so that young people learn how to, open bank accounts and save a portion of their money, and so you get that financial footing early on in your youth. Ongoing regional efforts to strengthen the linkage between the education and business community, again, to ensure that what is being taught both in the schools as well as the community colleges are providing an adequate base for our businesses, and as we attract these high quality innovation jobs, that the workforce is ready to provide and support that. Evaluating the impacts of a citywide minimum wage. I think everybody knows what that is. And for the future, evaluating the impacts of including job quality standards into city contracting. And just a little bit about what that is the concept that anyone that contracts with the city, we have a citywide living wage, but if there's any contracting with the city and there's any jobs that are generated as a result of that, for instance, if we sell properties, that any jobs that are generated as a result of activity or contracts with the city not only address living wage, but they also cover issues like health coverage, retirement, earned sick leave, benefits, adequate hours, healthy, safe working conditions, and that there are, even in these jobs, that they're try to encourage as much as we can their pathways to career advancement rather than jobs that are just sort of an end in themselves and low wage. So the idea behind this is really supporting an effort that is in conjunction with the Plan Bay Area and their economic prosperity strategy of trying to create additional pathways to middle income as well, and so that the jobs that we attract, they can cover a range of opportunities. And lastly is the evaluation of development of a personal financial education program. And the purpose of that, it really goes hand in hand with the citywide minimum wage and the job quality standards, is to encourage folks to, I touched on it a little bit with the internships, but if there is it's encouraging the establishment of bank accounts rather than going to check cashing, and really establishing, again, trying to create financial security and education about how best to use the financial systems. And it's to create a full spectrum of community investment, in that there's higher wages, but there's a place for those wages to go, and there's a place for people to invest them in themselves and in the community. This was presented to the Economic Development Advisory Committee at their December meeting, and they provided the following inputs. They felt that commercial development should occur in hubs where businesses of a certain type are clustered together, such as health or fitness, to create a destination. They felt that additional emphasis and prioritization is needed on infrastructure, particularly connectivity to high-speed fiber optic networks. And as I noted, that was in the first grouping where that was under a future and not in a current fiscal year or the immediate fiscal years. Additional development is needed for specific action items to support improved transportation and transit services, and greater efforts should be made to market existing Emeryville, existing economic development services and programs, as well as general promotion of Emeryville. At this point, these comments haven't been incorporated into the draft strategy. The strategy that was reviewed tonight is the same one that was reviewed by the committee, and revisions will be incorporated after comment has been received from the City Council. The next steps at this, as proposed by staff, is to revise the work plan based on the comments received and direction from the council tonight. That revised draft will be presented to the community in 2 community meetings, one during the day and one in the evening, to accommodate both businesses and residents. That will then be brought to the February 2015 Economic Development Advisory Committee for them to review the revised draft and approve a final version to go to the City Council, and then a final draft will be brought to the City Council for its consideration in February, at the 2nd February meeting. The direction requested from the council at this time is confirmation or revision of the strategic goals identified in the 2012 Economic Development Strategy. So those are the 10 goals that were initially set forth. Review and comment on the activities described in the work plan. Review and comment on the priorities and the timing for the implementation of the activities in the work plan, and confirmation of the process to finalize the work plan for the next 2 fiscal years. And with that, my presentation is concluded, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Before we have questions, do we have any public comment on the economic development report? Bill.
Vice Mayor Davis, City Councilors, my name is Bill Reuter. I'm a member of the Economic Development Advisory Committee. I think I speak for the committee when I say we thought this was a balanced and comprehensive plan. Some folks in the room thought that we should be here tonight and prioritize, or at least lobby for specific things. So I've come to lobby for one thing in particular: Emeryville support, fiscal support long term. We're in a state right now where we need to, in a concerted effort as a city, make sure we get the maximum funding we can possibly get for the Emeryville. I know that Mayor Atkin is spearheading this with the appropriate, or the various county committees. We know the money's there now that Proposition BB passed. We also know that there was money for funding for shuttle services previously there in the county, money for both capital investment and for operating expenses. So I urge the City Council and City staff to make a concerted effort to take maximum advantage of those funds out there and try to funnel them into support for the Emeryville, not just as it exists now, but as it might exist in the future, with extensions to West Oakland and extensions up into Berkeley. So that's my lobbying effort, and that's my priority. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Any other public comment? Bob.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. Good evening, Vice Mayor Davis, council members. Bob Cantor. I've been a member of the Economic Development Advisory Committee since its inception, and the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce here for the last 13 and a half years. We could spend a lot of time. There's a lot here, as you see. There's a lot in here. I can tell you that on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, there is not a bad idea in here. Everything in here is good. As always is in public policy, your job is to prioritize. We don't have enough staff time and financial resources to do everything in here, at least not initially. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep my comments tonight on the big picture items. We could spend a whole study session of an entire day here going through this and prioritizing, refining, and discussing this list. But a couple things. It's our position that there is nothing that you do in all your time here on the City Council that is more important than this. And the reason we say that is not just because we're the Chamber of Commerce, is because whatever it is you want for this city, whether it's family-friendly housing or bicycle lanes or nice parks or a nice child development center or whatever it is, that makes a difference. It only comes if you have the resources to do it. And those resources, those financial resources, are not going to come from the federal government. They're not going to come from the state government. They're coming organically from what we do here. I've referred a book that I'm a particular fan of. It's called The Coming Jobs War by James Clifton. And he makes, actually, if you read the book, one very simple proposition. That is, if you ask people, what do you want in life? And he claims to have polled everybody in the world on this. I don't know if that's true, but he says, we want a good job. I want a job so I can work, have a career, and ultimately support a family. You have no more important job than that. And much of this is what this is about. Michelle mentioned this career pathways to work. That's a big part of this. We have to retool our education system. That's a whole separate ballgame that we need to work with, of course, with our school district. There's now a grant program that's going to launch that pretty soon. I think Julie Sinai is going to head that, if I understand. She's going to work on that full time, if I believe that I might have my information correctly. We've already made inroads with Berkeley City College on this. Michelle attended as my guest last week, San Francisco Business Times breakfast on STEM education. It was an excellent event. We made some good progress there. But you have no more important job before you than job creation and wealth. It's going to come from us. And the Chamber has been arguing this and proposing this for you. There's a lot of good stuff here, and I want to say before my time runs out, Michelle does a great job. We're very lucky to have her. She puts a lot of time into this, and you've been presented a lot of good stuff. She doesn't do it alone, of course. She has a lot of input from Charlie's supervision, from the Chamber of Commerce, from the people on the committee. But you have been presented with at least an initial blueprint for how we're going to keep this city moving forward. And I'll say one last thing, and last is that the cities around us are doing this. We need to stay ahead of the game and stay on the game. Thank you for the time.
Mr. Bukowski?
Ken Bukowski, I had a couple of comments. I do want to ditto what Bill Reuter said about the Emeryville. I think it's important. I don't know that Ruth is spearheading much over there, but anyway, we need to get the money. I'd like to see maybe a little slightly, not a different approach, but what can we do for the people that are here? I mean, we want to create jobs and we want to do that, but what can we do for the residents? Can we look at community choice aggregation, maybe save some money on power? Can we give a small business tax credit to businesses that hire Emeryville residents so that each year you could take a look at it in March and say, well, we got 50 Emeryville employees, so whatever kind of tax credit we give, that would be a way to follow who's hiring people locally and maybe reward them, the employers who do the best at it. So I could say a whole lot of things about economic development. That's it for the moment. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this item? We'll move along. Diane, any questions or comments?
I did have one question just in terms of where it falls in our current plan as it is in terms of city identity. What has been done? I know I've seen a presentation on possibly getting Emeryville plastered all over the place sorry, this was by Brad Gunkel some months ago, not by you. But it's city identity, just a general question. Where are we at? Where would we like to go?
Well, a part of the issue is that we have a lot of what we had before our other materials and the way we were marketing ourselves was really based on redevelopment. And since the end of redevelopment, we've mostly just been essentially reusing those same materials since then. And what we would like to do is look more comprehensively at best practices by other cities. We haven't started that research yet to see what's the most effective use of our resources, but we would like to create there's several cities out there that have been very aggressive about putting forth what assets that they have and really creating there. Emeryville has very actually, quite excellent assets in terms of we have a very diverse economy. Many of our vacancies are quite low, but we want to be able to maintain on the leading edge of that and really play up a lot of our assets, and looking at other cities at this point is where we're going to start with that and eventually develop a plan on how to address that. Maybe retain a consultant, or maybe only for portions of that activity. Another thing that we're really looking at is in terms of working with our communities, our smaller neighborhoods, and that was sort of that BID Merchants Association work, looking at both what we can do as a city, but also to foster the certain neighborhoods and activities like what was proposed for the Park Avenue District, to see how that integrates in.
Right. I guess my idea is that I want to make sure that the physical aspect of city identity is not lost, that it's not just marketing materials, that when people come into Emeryville, they know they're in Emeryville because they see a sign that says Emeryville, home of X, Y, and Z. And then fiber optics, I think, is something that's been talked about in this town for a long time. And I've been made aware by my neighbors who are also interested in the fiber that's available in Emeryville that, yeah, just as you said, it is so close and yet so far away. So I'm curious if there are any resources that could help us to get these into homes and businesses, just in terms of grant funding, or if there's what we can exploit. Because the longer that we push this out, waiting on fiber, I think that we miss out on opportunities for tech, even small tech.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's it.
Jack.
Vice Mayor Davis, over here.
Oh, Charlie.
Could I just chime in with a response to partly of what you said about the physical identity? The program that you alluded to that Commissioner Gunkel was talking about is the gateways, and those are identified in the Emeryville General Plan. I think there's about 9 of them where you enter the city from an adjacent city, either on a street or on one of the bike paths. That has been included, as well as a potential banner program, the banners that are on the street lights, to help to foster the identity of the neighborhoods that Michelle was referring to in the public art master plan, the proposed public art master plan, for which there is a RFP on your regular council agenda coming up later tonight. So if you approve that item, then we'll go forward with the RFP and start the process of developing the public art master plan. And hopefully so there's a lot of overlap, between the various activities that the Economic Development and Housing Division does. And some of those identity issues will be addressed through that public art master plan.
Thank you, Charlie. Jack.
Okay, so I have some comments and some questions. First of all, in terms of, thank you for this. I know that this represents a lot of work, and thank you to the Economic Development Committee for your efforts on all of this. One of the things that I would like to do in terms of overlaying some more vocabulary, I think it's fine to, we talk a lot about workforce development, but I would also like to see the term anti-poverty measures added, because we could still be talking about jobs and workforce development, but I think that we need that kind of targeted emphasis, and there's nothing wrong with standing up as a city and saying that where there is poverty, we are against it. The Chamber already does work with the Bread Project, for example, and I would consider that both an example of workforce development and an anti-poverty measure. Another thing that I'm interested in is in terms of youth employment. I think that the internship program is great, but I'd also like to see us kind of broaden our ideas there a little bit. For example, Oakland uses Oakland Relief, which offers green jobs to local youth, and they often plant trees in Oakland. In fact, you can go on the website and get yourself a tree through Oakland Relief if you're an Oakland resident, and it helps both keep the city green and is a source for youth employment. Another thing that I would like to see in terms of the strategic goals, and some of this is already covered. Thank you for talking about the Emery Go-Round bill. For me, I'd like to see a category maybe called workforce supports, and I'm not even sure if that's exactly what I would call it, but something that includes accessibility of transit, right? But also childcare is something that allows people to go to work. Affordable housing, and also keeping our eye on an adequate mix of housing. And there are elements of this in the report already, but I think I'd like to see them gathered under an umbrella that the committee and the plan is looking toward supporting workers here in Emeryville. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is I have some questions about the business improvement districts. First of all, it would make a difference to me whether it was encompassing very large businesses within the district or if it was going to be small retail. And so while I'll say, okay, looking at bids sounds like one way to go, it would depend on which businesses and where in town. I also, thinking about fiber, I sent out a link to a report that talks a little bit about fiber. And one of the things that I've been interested in or thinking about, we've been talking about San Leandro Lit and the kind of marketing that they do. And I understand the way that the marketing can be a draw, but I also want to think seriously about the city's investment in infrastructure, and if fiber is going to be one of those investments, I think there are models in small cities to do that. Chattanooga is one. There are other models out there, and so you know, I'm putting that out there, and whether or not the committee feels compelled to look into that, I think it would get us beyond just the marketing goal, right? The other thing that I wanted to ask, or maybe ask for when the plan is finalized, is that we do have a contract with the Chamber of Commerce. And so I would like to know which of the items they will be working on or working with us on. So if that was kind of mapped out for me. In terms of the regional events like the Super Bowl, and this is so awful, but I don't know anything really about sports. Where's the Super Bowl going to be?
Santa Clara.
Thank you. Oh, that's terrible. But here's the thing. When you put in the remark, yeah, it's out there now. When you put in the remark about the America's Cup, for instance, I think that spending some city time, staff time on that, on the Super Bowl is okay, but I also want to be a little bit cautious about that. We know San Francisco went, you know, kind of whole hog supporting America's Cup, and I don't know how much it generated for Emeryville, but that might be something to, you know, I'd want to hear more about that. And then finally, looking at this, does this represent, you're talking about coming back to us mid-cycle with this plan. Would this represent an increase in the budget? Do you have an idea as to how much that might be?
Well, part of it is to get direction as to what some of these activities, if there's any that you wouldn't want to pursue. To be frank, a lot of these we tried to focus on ones that didn't really require a lot of additional budgeting. In terms of like the small business incentives, there's not a lot that we'd be putting out in terms of capital. We would just be foregoing our revenues. There would be some costs associated if we were to provide architectural and technical assistance.
Right.
We would look at other models to see if there was some sort of, reciprocal agreement we could have, but it's most likely we might give, small grants.
Yeah.
But we've really tried to make it more intensive in terms of, that's why there's a lot of discussion about partnerships, trying to leverage activities with other strategic partners to see what we can do in terms of regional activities or working with what other folks are doing to make sure that those programs benefit Emeryville, like the program that Bob referred to, that Julie Sinai is working on in terms of the workforce development. And so that's where most of our effort is going to focus. I don't anticipate of what's here that there's anything that's going to be tremendous in terms of a financial request from the city at this point. The one that would have the highest would probably be related to the fiber,
right,
because there's a major capital investment. Okay. Really, sort of any way we look at it for that one.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And I do want to just remind the council, too, you all, as part of your financial policies that you adopted in 2013, are setting aside 5% of the boomerang dollars that are coming back from redevelopment to economic development. And to date, I believe none of those dollars, or very few of those dollars, have actually been allocated. Okay. So there is some money that's anticipated to be spent here.
Okay, thank you.
Scott.
While I was campaigning, I met people who needed work. We're a little city, and I would love to be able to have some kind of local hire component that really we look out for our Emeryville residents, because we have so many jobs in ratio to the number of residents. It just seems like we should be able to do something like that. Also, I think that Emeryville gets uncharacteristically maligned in some ways when it comes to crime. We really are getting articles about our city that are making us seem like we are the most crime-ridden city in the Bay Area. And the truth is, it's a statistical issue. We have very few residents in the evening, and that's our gauge. 10,000 some people, but during the day we have 45,000 people. So I think if we could, in promoting our city, talk about the numbers from a more realistic perspective, from our perspective, so that when we talk about the city on a website, people can accurately gauge us in relation to the region. And also, because we're a small city, it seems like we could do things faster when it comes to potentially approvals and accommodating new business. And if we could have some metric that people could look at when they go to our website and say, well, how long does it take to get a building permit in Emeryville? And then we would be the city that would be the city that measures itself in some real way for business. And I think that this would, over time, help our cause. And predictability when it comes to business is a major concern. And if we could become more predictable in some way, even if we're not the absolute cheapest for everything, which we have tended to be a good deal for everything, if we can at least be really predictable, I think this helps a lot of business startups, but it also helps for ongoing business. And of course, the speed that we can do approvals for getting business going, if we can keep that as good as our reputation, that's a good thing for us.
Anything else? Scott, do you have any comments on the fiber optic issue?
Well, fiber optic really is happening all around us regionally. Like Oakland, for example, is getting a new fiber optic access that they didn't have because AC Transit, in building the new BRT line down International Boulevard, is deciding to put in some big fiber for their own use, but it's going to be available to those businesses along there. So I think to be competitive, we really have to think about that, because it's happening around us. And I think that we do not want to be the last city in the game here.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, I had one more.
Yeah,
I
Jack,
forgot,
go ahead.
yeah. There's one more thing, Michelle. In addition to thinking about the tax holidays for small businesses, could we also add maybe worker-owned businesses as well? So co-ops, a way to help them out as well. Thanks. Thanks, Nora.
Okay. The reason I asked Scott about the fiber optics is because I am convinced that this city has got to get in place within a reasonable amount of time, and I'm not talking 5 or 10 years, I'm talking 2 or 3 years, last mile fiber optic to every place in town. We just received as a city the, Google calls us the, what do they call us?
City.
The E-City, the capital of California for E-City. For all the businesses, that is not enough. But that is an open door, I feel, for the council and our city manager to go back to Google, to thank them for this great honor, you know, the capital of California, E-Cities, and then ask Google to do for Emeryville what they did in KC, which is to take the fiber optic for the last mile to every residence, to every business. We need that. That is something that I would like to see if I have the support of the council to make that a priority of the economic development, to move forward on it.
I'm particularly interested in serving not just businesses, but also residents
Exactly,
with fiber.
exactly.
So if we have both of those things, then I'm very interested.
Well, that's Sabrina, is this possible for you to hook up here with Google and thank them for their wonderful accolades?
Absolutely.
But we want something more.
And we can always ask.
That's good, that's good. But beyond that, I'm asking the council to see if we can put this as a top priority in the next 3 to 5 years. Everybody agree on that?
Absolutely.
That's
Well, the cost and value have to be
Exactly.
considered.
But if you don't make a stand and say, this is where we are and this is where we want to be, we'll have to go step by step and approve or not approve, but at least to get the ball rolling.
Well, I think it's a good idea to get the ball rolling.
Sabrina, you got the message loud and clear?
got it,
I'm
yep.
glad to hear that. I have 2 more things to say. First, as a liaison to the Economic Development Committee, I want to thank Bill Reuter and the rest of the committee. This is a committee in this city. Everybody shows up every meeting. People are really involved, they really care about it, and they really want to see things happen for the city. Great committee, and great staff report, Michelle. My last comment is, again, touches on what Jack and Scott and Diane are talking about. That is workforce development. We have got to focus on that. We have got to work with the school district. We've got to work with people in the business community. Just this week, from one of our major employers, I had a phone call. I had had a brief conversation about the STEM effort in the schools, and this big company wanted to get involved. So we're moving on this on another path. But I think economic development should make this workforce development again one of the prime objectives and prime priorities. And I'd ask to hear what the council has to say about that. I'm talking jobs and people prepared to have jobs.
Well, and I think, just to echo Bob's point, I think that the term good jobs is very important to me, that people have good jobs, not just any job.
Right.
So that it allows them to be able to afford housing, right, to be able to afford transit. And I agree that that has to be a priority for us. Yeah.
Okay, Michelle, you got your direction here. You need anything else, Sabrina?
Oh.
We have a clear direction here?
Got it.
Very good. Very good. This meeting is adjourned. We'll move.